Hello everyone, this is Joe Mecca, and he is an instructor at Milwaukee Community Center, and I took several classes from him. And is that correct?
No, 1999 is when I finished my degree.
Oh, okay. He does acrylics, paintings, and drawing classes, and he does a lot of just not drawing, but the technique on how to draw, like shadows and portraits, and he's got some techniques that are really a helpful thing to start your drawing with. And an excellent teacher. He's going to show today effective shadows. Is that what you're going to do today?
Yeah, a little bit of that. Yeah.
And Joe's work has been featured in the New American Paintings, Art Week, the Oregonian, and the Portland Mercury. So here's Joe for you.
Hey, thanks, Rita.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for having me today. So just a little of my background. I studied art at both. You guys care if I sit?
No.
I studied art at Portland State and at University of Oregon, and I got a Bachelor's of Arts from U of O, and then a Master of Fine Arts from Portland State in '99. I didn't even know what an MFA was. I was out of undergraduate, and I was working for a bakery, and I was like, I got to do something else here. So I went back to school, and I discovered that Portland State had this program, Master of Fine Arts in Painting program, and it was a 2-year program. And quite literally, they said, here's a key, here's your workspace, get to work. That was it. And so I had to figure out what I wanted to do. Was I going to make representational artwork, models or still life or landscape? What was I going to do? And so, through the 2 years, it was a roller coaster of figuring out what I wanted to do. And what I ended up doing was very minimal abstract art. That's how I would describe what I did in school. But going to school, and I didn't know this going in, I was still young and stupid. I was like 26 when I started. Going in, I didn't know that I was qualified to teach. I had no idea, but they said, oh yeah, you can teach college now. And so soon after finishing in 1999, I started teaching design, painting, drawing for Portland State and Portland Community College. And Portland Community College is sort of my main job now. And then Milwaukee Center, that's how I know Patsy and Rita. And hopefully, maybe some of you guys in the future, because we're doing, I'm assuming you all know where it is. It's just down the street, right? And we have great programs, not just in art, but obviously in other things too. And it sort of seems like our art classes always coincide with the ukulele class, so we get to learn a lot of Beatles songs, and it's fun. The sound goes through the walls, it's fine. So I've been at Milwaukee since 2018. Obviously we had closed down, so I sort of started and then stopped. And so we do painting and drawing. In the drawing class that I do, and that's sort of what I'm here to promote a little bit, that, having people do some drawing. The drawing class that I do, as Rita said, is it's structured with week by week exercises. And for example, many of you are artists here already, so you may know this, but typically when I start a drawing class, 3/4 of the class, they never picked up a pencil, right? They're brand new. But I teach things like sighting. So when you see artists measuring stuff like this with their pencil or their thumb, those are skills to make good proportions in your artwork, and things like alignments and negative space, probably stuff you guys all already work with in your work. And by the way, the work I saw in the back looks fantastic, really good. So you're advanced, and I teach really intro stuff. That's kind of what my strengths are as an instructor. I brought a couple of older drawings that had been in a drawer for a long time. I've never put them in frames, and I think we all as artists go through phases, right? We go through phases where we want to do really super representational art. We want to know how to do a portrait really perfectly. And then other times we want to be all loose and abstract and like Picasso or something. So I went through a phase, it's probably about 15 years ago now, where I tried to do as perfect a representational drawing as I could. And so I have these drawings here, and I just went out and gathered dried up leaves and tried to, as perfectly as I could, represent them with a real harsh light and shadow. You can see the light and shadow, that's the drama that I was going for. And so in coming to talk to you guys today, I thought, and by the way, when you draw a leaf that is dehydrating moment by moment, and you mentioned the light changing in landscapes, the light's moving, right? Everything's moving. These things will crinkle up as they're drawing, these leaves. So I'm sitting there, wait, stop. I'm trying to represent this. It's like drawing a life, it's like doing a life drawing, and the model's falling asleep and moving all over the place. And this leaf has the same thing happening. It's constantly crinkling up and drying and getting brittle. So I had to sort of make these adjustments along the way, and I didn't expect that, and that's interesting. But these drawings, I think I was at a point in art where I just wanted to get back. I wanted to build some confidence again. It's like I want to see if I can do something really as exact as possible. And I was happy with that, but I quickly moved on from that. But one of the things, and this is sort of the conversation that Rita and I had in coming today, was what really is a super important part of visual art, and that's contrast, values, lights and darks. You guys know that if you paint, right? And so I thought of, I could have added Edward Hopper to this presentation. Do you know Edward Hopper, the painter, American painter, like really well known for very dramatic light and shadow in his artwork. Actually, I could probably find a few in my presentation. But I thought of Caravaggio. So when I was at school at Portland State, they, in addition to giving me a key and saying, here's your studio, get to work, it was literally a big empty white room. I better figure out what kind of art to do. Later on, the instructors started coming in and visiting and saying, this is a good idea, maybe try this technique, whatever. But for a while, it was just me and quiet. But in addition to that, they made us do a lot of art history, and I was always interested in the Baroque, late Renaissance, really dramatic light and shadow, very theatrical, and so I thought of Caravaggio. And Caravaggio is an artist that used that term chiaroscuro, which you may know. It's an Italian word. It's the effect of contrasted light and shadow created by light falling unevenly or from a particular direction on something, the treatment of light and shade in drawing and painting. And so you can really see the very directional light. It's like a stage play. And that's what I was trying to capture with those leaf drawings there. I literally had a spotlight this far away from my subject, my still life of my, actually it's not a still life because the thing was crinkling and moving all around on me. But, so I was, really trying to go for that drama, and Caravaggio is an artist who does that. Caravaggio employed close physical observation, dramatic use of chiaroscuro that came to be known as tenebrism. He made the technique a dominant stylistic element, transfixing subjects in bright shafts of light and darkening shadows. Caravaggio vividly expressed crucial moments and scenes, often featuring violent struggles and death. He worked rapidly with live models, preferring to forego drawings and work directly onto the canvas. That's interesting because it's so precise. The artwork is so perfect, and yet it says working rapidly. I know that those of you who do plein air, you mentioned that earlier, have to work fast sometimes because of the changing light and stuff. But you look at this and you think, how can you work fast and be so perfect, with it? But really the motivation for choosing to show Caravaggio is that really dramatic light and shadow. So today I was hoping we could try some techniques where we go for that together. And I don't know if you know a lot about Caravaggio, but does anybody? Yeah?
No, I know he ended his life as an exile.
Yeah, he was a kind of a bad guy. And the stories that you read, and again, I need to get a book from the library to know more. But what I learned was that he got in some kind of fight with somebody and actually killed them and had to flee all over Sicily, Malta. And when I'm looking through a presentation and trying to find images to show, a lot of them were too violent to even put in my presentation. Blood and everything, And so I tried to edit and not really try and show those. But one of the things that I talk about in my painting and drawing classes are what we call passages. And if you've heard the term negative space is the space around the subject matter, the background. And you can see these passages of positive and negative. You don't really see definitions. You see light just like a shadow just passing through the picture. And I think that adds a lot of the naturalism of the scene when you do that. It's kind of a less is more philosophy. And I like that about Caravaggio. These are, all pretty gigantic paintings. And so, but I don't understand how they can work so fast with all that precision, the definition of the muscles and the forms on the arms. And this one, I believe, is actually supposed to be a self-portrait. He put his face in a few of his paintings, sometimes in the background. And this one was one of my favorites that I found in preparing. Great composition, very full, but again, less is more, right? You really only see the highlights. And the artist lets your imagination kind of take you through it. This is a pretty well-known one too, but again, you see that light coming dramatically. If you know Rembrandt also used dramatic light and shadow. And so Caravaggio was an artist that I thought of in coming today. Another artist is, I like this one too. So you're just looking for shapes. You look at the face here and you see that almost like a stingray or spade shape right there. That's what you're looking for in art. You're not thinking so much about subject, you're thinking about the elements of art, shape, value, texture, and so on. putting the presentation together and seeing these. But I'd like to see some Caravaggio's in person, And there, Vermeer, who you probably also know. Another artist later, probably 75 years later. But again, you see those passages of the background just passing into the figure and out. You really don't see the definition of head here. And that one you probably know because they made a movie, right?
Yes.
You can see all the cracks from the oil. Do you guys paint in oil?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Have you had issues with cracking? No? It hasn't aged enough maybe.
Yeah, 200 years should do it.
Yeah, so that's because of the brittleness of the oil paint, where acrylic is very elastic, it's liquid plastic, it may not be as nice to paint with, but it's more durable. And so if you're painting on oil, you might consider painting on panel, on either wood or a canvas board, so it doesn't have that buoyancy, and it doesn't, 200 years from now, crack. So, any questions so far? Okay, so, well, first of all, this is interesting, and this we could try this really quick. I don't know how easy it'll be to do, like on your laps, but I'm gonna pass around these target things, and I use them for people to warm up, and I'll show you what to do with it. Can we pass some of those around?
Yeah, I bought 6 pencils, so hopefully there'll be more than 6.
I brought a lot too.
Oh, you did, okay.
I have a lot of different things today. Erasers are going to be important today.
Yeah.
My circle. I have Oh, I think also, well, I'll come back to it. So, I also have these elliptical shapes. And what these are literally to just practice creating, you trace them with your pencil. And when you're tracing, you're trying to get your whole arm involved and moving around and around. And you can go clockwise or counterclockwise. So maybe spend a minute just practicing some circles and trying to get that trace along those dotted lines. It's a great way to warm up. And then as you do that, I'll get prepared to show you some stuff. You want to work on some kind of back, is that what you're looking for? A board or something?
Your clipboard is disappeared.
Oh, you had a clipboard?
Yeah.
You want to use the back of this pad here? So when I teach drawing, I always start a class with some warm-ups. And sometimes it's the templates, or sometimes I'll put an image on the screen and have people just do these warm-ups. And to try and promote this idea that sometimes it takes a while to get into get that arm going. So when I do those circles, I'm left-handed, so it feels right for me to go clockwise, but for you it might feel good to go counterclockwise. The more you do that, and the more you just focus, which way were you doing it?
I'm right-handed, so I guess this way. is
Counter, yeah.
Counter.
Yeah, that makes
Because
more
I'm trying
sense.
to go the other way and it's not doing.
Yeah. Easy to get, Amazon art store, it's called graphite powder.
I've seen
And
it, but I haven't seen it.
It's, it's extremely messy. So I brought wet wipes in case you need those.
Is it like graphite? Is that what it?
Powdered graphite.
Yeah.
So I prepared a couple of sheets with it, and what you want to do, and I'll show you how to do it, but basically you tone a piece of paper with it. And you sprinkle it on and rub it in basically. And then you can work with an eraser and you work with this, yeah, like a subtraction. We call it value reduction or subtraction. So I'll do a couple of demos actually. I have another presentation that I'll just put up. Start. So if you've ever worked with like softer media like charcoal, fine charcoal, compressed charcoal, you can smudge it and smear it, but you can also take away and erase it. If you look at this image here, you can see that the artist has created highlights. They've created highlights, right, with the eraser. So I'll show you how this is done. And a little of this stuff goes a long way. So if you buy one of these little containers, 12 ounces of graphite, you'll have it forever. And I think this is probably about $10. I don't know if I've ever seen a smaller one, but basically it's just sprinkle. It goes a long way. Paper towel, chamois cloth, toilet paper. Basically, you're just rubbing it around.
What do you ever, or can you ever use acrylic or, mixed media, or does it not want to stick?
I think that's a great question. The question was, can you incorporate other media with this technique? I think you can. I think it's probably best to, anytime you're doing mixed media on heavier duty material. This is drawing paper. You got this wet, it would crinkle, right? That's why those of you who do watercolors use the watercolor paper. It's heavier weighted, it'll work better. So, you can get it as dark as you want, but I typically go for something like that. It's very easy to work with. And then I always try and have people start with an eraser. So, see, it's very easy to take away. And so what I did for you guys today is, and I can prepare some sheets of this for you. I prepared a few already here. I brought in some really high contrast, dramatic, chiaroscuro images. And I have a few different ones with different degrees of detail. But you can see when I have students do these drawings, we're going for that real drama, right? So I've used this image here before in a demo, and I always have students start with that really I'll show you, give me 1 second, I'll show you what I'm doing. And then that's very simple, but so I might just start with something like that. And then I can go in later with darker graphite and shade my dark areas. That's very dark in the background and stuff like that.
Would you work it with the same graphite or would you do it with a pencil?
A little of both, maybe. I mean, it depends on how, like if I have a lot of background to cover, it's a good question. I might go in, sprinkle more graphite and get it really dark back there. But then going to the graphite pencils and using the darker graphite pencils. So I don't know, everybody here probably has a different, level of background with art and drawing and stuff. But if you didn't know, pencils come with a range of hardness and softness. So if you see H on a pencil, 2H, 4H, that stands for hard. And that means the graphite's very light. It doesn't make a dark mark. But if you see B on a pencil, that stands for black. So if you have a 4B, 6B, 8B, 9B graphite pencil, and I have a set here that goes all the way to 12B, it gets very dark. In fact, why don't you just pass this around and just take a look at this bottom here. It shows the spectrum, this range of light to dark. It's really good to have a range because, if you're trying to make a really dark value, dark shading, you're going to need really dark pencils. Or you work with charcoal, where it's really inky black. So
But the harder the pencil, the lighter.
that's right. Yeah.
It's reverse of what we would normally think of in paints.
Yeah. Here, let me do something really quick.
Yeah.
And you can even.
And then and then this one in the middle is 7 and 8. It's fine, like, that was always lighter. Reverse is what you darker. Yeah. So
Here's your, really quick, here's your sort of spectrum where you've got harder and lighter, the higher the number of the H pencils, and darker, the higher the number of the B pencils. So if you guys want to just pass this around. But it's good to have a little set. It's good to have a little set when you're drawing.
yeah.
And I have noticed Stadler brand is pretty good. And, but again, easy to find pencil sets online or at Michael. I'm gonna start making some sheets for you here. And I've got some here ready to go if you want to grab, and then you can also go through my images. I have 4 different images with different degrees of complexity, and I'll put these here too. And you may be limited on pencils. I have a lot of different stuff. So as I do these sheets here to prepare these, you can come up and take a look and browse at my images and take one of those sheets. Yeah, I think I'm gonna sit for this part though.
Yeah, I'm very serious. This is, did you guys see the picture of the, monkey, whatever? When you did that, you started with the graphite and then pulled it out with the eraser?
Yeah, it's a great way to describe it, pulling it out. I didn't do this. In fact, this is from a really good video I found on YouTube, and I'd be glad to share that with you. So these images that I have here, again, in a lot of my intro classes, I have students keep it simple, but you can see the dramatic light and shadow. You can see where the light source, comes from, and you can see how you can integrate that original tone into the picture based on its value, right? So very quick and easy to get drama going. And I think that one of the biggest criticisms of people who are new to drawing and they're making drawings with light and shadow is they don't create enough contrast. They just, and that's common. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that happens, right? So I try and promote this, let's get going with this real drama. And I think that the value reduction is this erasing thing is a really great way to,
We all remember these.
yeah. This was a self-portrait by one of my students. She was very good. And it's messy, so sometimes people create taped edges. Careful with the blue tape, right? And carefully peel it. And there are some decent. I thought this was funny. Sorry. I feel like a photo, putting their face on the photocopy.
We've all.
We've all done that at least
Yes.
once, right?
Yeah.
You gotta keep your eyes closed, though.
That's good. Yeah, that shirt.
Yeah, so this is a lot like the Caravaggio, isn't it? That you really just look at the passage of light and shadow. So less is more. Draw what you see, now what you know. I mean, that really is the first, that should be the name of the class I teach. Because that sums it all up. Draw what you see, not what you know. It's very easy to, if you've ever done portrait, that one's got charcoal on it, so you get a more rich.
Yeah.
It does. If you've ever done a portrait, you learn that the eye line is halfway from the top of the head to the chin. That's a very important proportion of the face, halfway. But people who don't know that, I think they draw what they assume is that eyes are higher up in the head and the nose is longer. And then it distorts and it becomes like a Picasso drawing, right? It becomes this long, elongated nose to compensate. So draw what you see, not what you know. In my drawing class, we just really spend so much time on these proportion things, and I think that for young students, because I teach at PCC, and for young students, they get really bored. It's like, oh, he's making me draw a cylinder and a cone or something, and they want to be drawing a video game character. I try and let them do that, yes, but really, to me, it doesn't matter what you draw when you're learning to draw. It's breaking things down into just the formal components. So, this stuff is messy. And if you guys want to start coming up, you can take a look at my images and take a sheet of paper and also grab an eraser if you don't have one, because I got